Conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we're gonna identify the steps of our initial scene size up. What does scene size up mean to you guys?
What all you're dealing with and the picture.
Yeah, it's like the picture, the general overview of what you're dealing with, right? Everybody's gotta start somewhere. We gotta kind of see what we're walking up to. We're gonna review injury patterns from mechanisms of injury. So how did they get hurt? That's their mechanism of injury. We're gonna identify how to determine nature of illness. So EMS really comes down to two calls. There's medical or there's trauma calls. So if it's a trauma call, it's gonna be a mechanism of injury. And then if it's a medical call, it's a nature of illness. So if I get called out to a respiratory distress, the nature of illness is respiratory depression, distress. Words. And then we're gonna review scene safety. So that's the second line, BSI, and then your scene safety. But scene safety is something we think about throughout the entirety of the call every single time. Because we've been on scene where your scene can flip and then it's no longer safe and it's time to get out of there. So it's not something we just think about whenever we first get there. This is Chaz's favorite video.
Is this the freaking mechanism of injury video?
Yeah.
I freaking love this video. Up.
Okay.
They almost had a mechanism of injury.
Almost had a mechanism.
Oh my God, look what you just did to my car. Hello, lady, car stopped ahead of you. Maybe if you'd stop grabbing your face full of ice cream, you'd notice these things.
Is everybody here okay?
Yeah, I just got rear ended, that's all.
Does anybody need an ambulance?
Well, I got a little whiplash, but I think I'm okay.
All right, we need to keep traffic flowing here, so go ahead and get back in your cars and we'll get ready to move on to the shoulder.
Alright. Holy crap, Johnson, come here. You see this mechanism of injury? Why isn't she C-spine yet? I want those batteries cut, and I want C-spines here now. Much better. Alright, man, I know this seems kind of silly. Why don't you go ahead and cut open that other car and cut that battery too? Just in case.
Oh, ma'am, if you can lay down for me, I'm gonna put this brace down on your neck.
Look, my neck's just a little sore. I don't need any of that.
Ma'am, with all due respect, just look at that mechanism of injury.
Yeah, my car got hit.
You realize that tomorrow morning you could wake up and be a paraplegic. Is that what you want? Ma'am, come here. Does this hurt?
No, it's not hurt. Ah.
Because that shouldn't hurt, ma'am. That should not hurt. Something could be wrong with your neck, okay? So you should probably let us take you to the hospital.
Okay, what do we got here? Holy, look at that mechanism of injury. Why isn't she C-spine yet?
Well, she just doesn't think that anything's wrong with her.
Well, did you even try the focus spine test?
Twice. I guess she just doesn't understand the scientificness of that test.
Look, guys, I really feel like I'm okay. You're starting to scare me.
Yeah, you should be scared. You see this? I just spent 22 weeks at EMT school for nothing.
All right, go ahead and lay back and relax, and we'll get you wheeled on over to the ambulance, okay?
And I think this is a little too serious to be hanging out in traffic for.
Yep, those rubberneckers sure make a mess of things.
air ambulance landing on the freeway, and all traffic is already stopped.
A helicopter, really? How much is this gonna cost?
Let me ask you this. What did you say that your life is worth when you're $17,000?
17,000.
No thanks is necessary, man. Just doing my job. Well, at least I won't have to drive very far.
I love it from the helicopter. Look at that mechanism.
Hope.
All right. So the first thing we ask and do is be aside, right? So we're gonna take proper body substance isolation. Put your gloves on, put your goggles on if you wanna wear them, your masks, all that stuff. So scene safety, if this happens before you even get to the call. So if you get called out to like a GSW or something, they're gonna have you stage until PD clears the scene, or SO, whoever you're working with. But this goes, like I said, throughout the entirety of the call. So scene safety is something we're always checking. That also includes like whenever you pull up to something like a gas leak, you need to stage your ambulance a good little bit away. Next is our mechanism of injury, our nature of illness. So is it a medical call? Is it a trauma call? Is it a medical and trauma call? Did someone start having a stroke so they wrecked their car? These are things that we all need to consider. Our number of patients, usually it's just one, but there are those instances where you're like, number of patients, there's 4 people in this house, all passed out. And then do you need additional resources? So that counts as ALS, that counts as flight, that counts as hazmat.
More ambulances.
More ambulances, SO, anybody that you want.
Anything that you can think of that falls under outside of you in your ambulance, get them going early, especially being out here. We're so far away from everything. If we need to call a hazmat team, we don't have a hazmat team in town. We can try to pull Phoenix or try to pull Marigold. If they're like, frick you, we're not coming, our next option is calling like Elko County, right? Air Resources are 45.
You try to keep a straight face.
Air Resources are at minimum 45 minutes from us. Was that you? Stupid. So get resources started early. Don't wait until you get there. If it sounds like you're going to need resources, get them going early. And then if you can cancel them or want to cancel them after you get there, you can. So
Yeah, they could be flying around above your patient and you cancel them and they fly away, that patient doesn't get a bill. So I always call them, they always ask if you want to put the helicopter on standby or if you want to launch them, just launch them. Because if putting them on standby, they go out and stand by the helicopter. They're just waiting to go. Whereas if you launch them, they could already be on their way. If you need them, you're not wasting that extra few minutes or a lot of minutes that it might take. Normally it's about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on who you're calling, where they're coming from. So it's good to get them started early, especially out here.
yeah. In Georgia, we put a lot of helicopters on standby because we had so many in the area that they would be to us in like 15 minutes, even without, like from the time we called them to them being on scene was like 15, 20 minutes. Out here, it's like an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. So just have them start this way and then you can always call them off and it's not your fuel.
We only have like the 2 helicopters, right?
No, we got 3. So we have MedX and Winnemucca. Then we have MedX and Elko, and then Reach and Elko. But then MedX and Reach both also have planes in Elko. And then if we need to go out further than that, we can call like Air St. Luke's from Idaho's been here, Battleborn from like Urington comes in, Care Flight from Reno will come in. So we can call outside of the Winnemucca Elko area if we need to, but
Those are gonna be a
Again.
lot longer.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, so every step outside of Winnemucca and Elko, you're just waiting longer and longer, so
Well, and Reach keeps one in Reno. Did you say that?
that's, yeah, well, it's Care Flight.
Oh, yeah, careful. They've changed their name to Bill Medic.
Yeah, it's all like a GMR umbrella,
Yeah.
and you got like Care Flight, Reach, like a bunch of other companies up under GMR.
So, your little quote, the only predictable thing about emergencies is that they are unpredictable. So this is why we keep our heads on a swivel. Scene safety should always be in the forefront of your mind. And this comes not only from environmental things, gas leaks, those kinds of things, family members, animals, dogs. They have freaking Cujo sitting there trying to bite your face off while you're trying to take care of, the patient. Those are
Yeah,
all
like-
things that happen.
We had a lady out in Hilltop that used to have an attack goose, and goose would beat the dog piss out of you.
Yeah,
Stick to lead time.
yeah, he was not.
What's the difference between the helicopter and the plane though? Is it like the size of the patient or how fast they need to get there?
No, well, so the size of the patient can matter, right? Because theoretically, all those beds is based off of like whether they can buckle them in or not. If you have a bigger patient, they have a longer distance to travel, they'll bring like the airplane just because they don't have to stop and refuel. Theoretically, everything that fits in the plane should fit in the helicopter just because it's the size of the buckles in the bed that matter, not so much like the weight. They like to say that like with the helicopters, if it's a bigger person and they can still fit the buckles, but they're on like the top end of that, they might have to like burn off fuel or have like a lighter flight crew to be able to effectively get where they need to go. But theoretically,
Sometimes it depends on weather too.
Yeah.
Fixed wing will fly in more weather than a helicopter will, or even distance. So like if we're transporting somebody to like Salt Lake, usually they'll do like a fixed wing because they can go further than a helicopter.
Yeah.
It depends. We
Okay.
call them, we say what we need, and they'll send us whatever they think is most appropriate.
Yeah.
All right, so collision scenes, as you approach, look and listen for other emergency units approaching. This is a big one, so whenever you guys go through like an EVOC course or an EVOS course, we're stopping at stop signs, we're stopping at red lights. I don't know how many of you have seen the video of the fire truck running the red light and then the ambulance hits them, because they're both just like going. So that's another thing that you really need to keep an eye out on. Whenever we start talking about later in the chapters, I think it's one of your last chapters, we talk about like where to park on a scene in an ambulance. So we kind of park ahead of everybody else. Like fire department stays a little bit further back or don't block traffic. So just make sure you're keeping an eye out. Look for any down power lines, obstacles in the roadway, ice, people running out and waving their hands at you. We
They
like
love to do that. Like we can't see the freaking mangled cars in the middle of the road. They're like
They'll stand in the middle of the road. And
doing
"Hey,"
jumping jacks.
and they're like, let's not stand in the road.
Get clipped by another car.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw my first decapitation that way. Lady was like, hey, in the middle of 285 and freaking,
FedEx truck come down and freaking
Yeah.
railroaded that lady.
yeah, so they do that. Also watch traffic, so something on like a corner like this, oncoming traffic can't see you or them. So just get everybody, if you can, get everybody out of the cars and away, come out of the road. And then look for the smoke, which way is the smoke blowing, that kind of stuff. Another thing I'll say, this debris in the road, I have seen lots of people like going out there trying to kick it out of their way and they step on it and fall. So don't do that. Don't do
Carlin
that.
Fire just did it a few weeks ago.
They did. She just came up. Like, don't do that. So if you're in the scene, any kind of clues indicating escape hazardous materials, that's a big thing out here. We have a lot of hazmat stuff because of the mines you guys are with. Like we had an accident down on 305 a few months ago, and they were like, hey, this could be a cyanide spill. So those are things that we need to look for, and you can see the smoke. Sometimes you can like see stuff. So if you can see it from a distance, maintain your distance. Victims on or near the road, if someone gets ejected, there's a chance they land in the middle of the road. Sometimes if you're called out to an accident and you can't find a patient, look around like the area. Sometimes they get thrown out into a field or the desert or whatever. So make sure you're looking for them.
And make sure you look for them in the road, because there may or may not have been an instance in Atlanta where one of our QRVs ran over a dead guy that was in the road because it was 2 a.m. Nobody could see. It was chunks of dead guy. But
Yeah.
it was
Multiple
about 8
people.
someone's had hit them before
Yeah.
that. So be mindful of that too. When somebody, when it's real dark outside, pay attention when you're coming up, because if they're laying in the middle of the road, you're not going to see them until it's too late. So
Down wires is another big one. So if someone hits a power pole and that power pole goes down, you need to be mindful where you're stepping, what you see. Don't go, this is the power wire. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. Just wait for it to get secured. I've had a couple scenes where like everywhere around the patient, it has down power lines. And we had to go like a whole another half mile up the road to get to them, so we didn't drive over the power poles or the power lines or step over them. So you're pretty much waiting for Nevada Power to come out here and shut them off. So if you can get to the patient another way without having to step over, that's ideal. I haven't ran into it very much around here. I'm sure it happens. And then signals from officers or other emergency services, big flashlight things. So someone in this number you're pulling up, especially in the middle of the night, they're like, hey, it's over here. They're blinding you with their little flashlight. So watch for that stuff. We keep one of these books. You guys, we were talking about the app that we have, a little hazard material emergency response guidebook. So if you have a situation or something's down or there's an accident and you see these plaques on the vehicle, we keep binoculars too. So if you're at a distance, you can read them and see what it is. Sometimes they'll call it in to dispatch, and most of the time though, the semi-truck drivers, they know what they're hauling. So if you ask them and they're with it enough to be like, yeah, I was hauling batteries. What, didn't you run into that? Like it was like a big hazmat thing and the dude's like, I was just carrying batteries. Like,
yeah, we were in Georgia. They were like shutting the interstate down. They were calling hazmat teams, all this stuff, because he had all these placards. And he's like, yeah, bro, I just have batteries. They were like, oh, he's leaking fluids everywhere. Yeah, it's gas. He's fine.
Yeah.
You just have batteries.
Yeah. So just keep in mind all those things, because we want to be able to identify them. We get more into identification of those placards later in our chapters. There's like one of the last chapters of your book. There might be a few questions, like if you see a red diamond, what is that indicative of? Usually it's flammable. This guy knows way more about it than I have to look. So, yep, I'll look it up in my book, but don't ask me to recall what every color means. So, danger zone, specific guidelines. So when there are no apparent hazards, it's 50 feet in all directions from the accident scene. If there is fuel spilled, it is 100 feet in all directions from where that accident is, or if the vehicle is on fire. And then any kind of down wires, you're going to do one full span of wires. So where the traffic poles are, you're going to do one full span of traffic poles away from the accident, wherever that down wire is. So I'm pretty sure there's a test question on this stuff. So these are good to know. 50 feet if no hazards, 100 if it's fuel spilled or any kind of fire, and then down wires a full span from telephone pole to telephone pole. Pretty sure it's a test question. Here's another video. This one's a good. Who's seen this video before? Last year I had like 5 people that had seen it. So this is an officer. He got called to a man down or something. So you see the smoke coming out of the scene. You see the dude laying in the middle of the road?
4234, my name was EMS for extra, I'll be able to start taking pictures.
I don't know why they did it. Tell them to expedite. We're driving as fast as we can. I can't drive no goddamn faster.
So that smoke is chlorine gas.
He's going down.
So this is where like the awareness aspect of this comes in. If you roll up and you've got a freaking minivan that just ran into a pickup truck and there's a little bit of smoke from radiator fluid or whatever, that's one thing. But if you notice, like right as he's pulling up, there's like a giant white container sitting here with smoke pouring out of it. Probably no touchy, right? Like this freaking giant white container right here. Yeah. So he's down. Probably quits. But yeah. Now we gotta deal with two patients, right? So yeah. This guy's coming in hot, about to run over everybody. They did expedite it. This is very big in the EMS world. If you're not trained, don't mess with it. If you're not on a team, don't freaking dick with it. Like, don't go messing with this stuff. That's what these teams are designed for. They have the equipment for. That's not my job. If somebody's down like this, if I can't get to them, just can't get to them. Like, it sucks. People die. Like, you want to try to save people, but I'm also not going to be like freaking Officer Randy over here that goes running up and then now I'm laying on the ground next to the other guy, right? Like, it doesn't help the situation. So
The whole essence of scene safety is that you can't help other people if you're down. That's the thing. Yeah, don't go running into clouds of things. So I like the thumb rule. I was taught if you can cover the scene with your thumb, that's a perfect distance. Anytime you see like any kind of hazmat or smoke or anything like that. Crime scenes. So obviously you're gonna walk in there after the scene is secured, hopefully.
if you know.
You know? So if you get called out to like an abuse situation, around here they're really good at making sure it's safe before we walk in there. It's not like that everywhere. So as you're pulling up, you can hear the loud voices fighting. If you have visible weapons, obviously that needs to be secured. Drug or alcohol paraphernalia, don't go stepping on crack pipes because APD likes to yell at you because of it.
Yeah, they get very mad about their crack
It was an
pipes.
accident. Stepped out of the ambulance and I heard crunch and I was like,
What the frick are you doing? There's evidence. Evidence for what? She was smoking crack.
yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, unusual silence or knowledge of prior violence. So around here, they're also pretty good at if there's somebody that has known violence towards EMS or officers, they'll let you know before you get there. Or if you've dealt with it before, you know. So our goal here is to try and preserve the scene as much as possible, but do what you need to do, kind of thing. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to work around these scenes, but just be mindful. We have walked into hundreds of shooting scenes. Try not to move and kick around their bullets, but if you have to step on stuff to get to your patient, that's kind of the priority, right? So be mindful of it, but don't let it impede your ability to do your job.
All right, so the nature of call is determining why the EMS is being called. So this is that mechanism of injury, nature of illness slide. So you get called out to chest pain. There's always a chance that you roll up and they have chest pain because they were shot in the chest, right? So that's always an option, but those are things you're gonna kind of run through your head before you get on scene. Like me personally, I always assume the worst. So if I get called to chest pain, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this because it could be a heart attack. I'm gonna do this, this, and this. Or if somebody's stuck in a car, usually dispatch will update you like, hey, you know, this person's stuck, like you're gonna need extrication, or they're unresponsive, or whatever it may be. But usually you know this stuff before you get there, but there always are those few outliers of like, you get called for a toothache, but it's actually an aspirin overdose. Like, those things happen. All right, mechanism of injury. So these are the forces that have caused the injury. So this could be something as simple as kicking your toe on a table to they rolled their vehicle. I will say that looking at the car, looking inside the car from whatever you can, as long as it's safe to do so, that can tell you a lot of information about what could be going on with your patient. So if you have a rollover or you have like somebody that rear-ended somebody else and you're looking at airbag deployment, you're going to be looking at the windshield to see if their head hit the windshield, they'll star out. If their seatbelt is locked in the I was wearing it position or not wearing it position, that can tell you a lot. Because we get the people that are like, yeah, I was wearing my seatbelt and it's locked, like they weren't wearing it at all. Any kind of steering wheel deformity. So I've had patients where like they hit the steering wheel and it deformed the steering wheel bad enough, and they had a lot of really bad internal trauma because their chest hit that steering wheel. If you're hitting a steering wheel hard enough for your body to deform it, there's going to be a lot of things going on in there that I can't see. So those are things that you want to take note of as you're looking at the scene.
A lot of times the speedometers on certain vehicles will stop or get stuck wherever the accident happened, especially if the vehicle loses like electronic systems and the crash was bad enough to like kill the power on the car. You can look in and see the speedometer. You know, if it's stuck at 80, then that's about the speed that they were going when they made that impact. So you can look at things like that too.
So here's an example of that steering wheel. Someone hit that steering wheel hard enough for it to do that. That's a lot of force. So Chaz and I, and I'm sure Calvin, anybody that's worked in EMS for any amount of time, we've all seen the patients that they're walking around and they're like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then you look inside the car and you see something like this and you're like, actually, let's go get checked out. And there's always something more going on when you have something this severe. So head-on collisions, these are up and over. They go up and over the steering wheel. So this starring of the windshield, you'll see if their head has hit the windshield. A lot of times you'll see like hair stuck in it. It pulls hair out as they come back. And they're like, I didn't hit my head, but there's like a big old chunk of hair stuck in their windshield. And then also the down and under. So if they go down and under, a lot of times that's like the knee injuries, the ankle injuries. I've had people try and slam on the brake so hard that they break their ankle. That's another example. So just look at the injury pattern so you can see here too that this can be kind of like, what's the word? This can be confusing because where this airbag little door came up, it also caused windshield scarring. But that wasn't from someone's head. That was from their little airbag thing. Make sure you're looking across the whole windshield. Sometimes you get on scene and their whole windshield's just completely shattered. Obviously, it's kind of hard to tell with something like that. But just know that other things can cause little windshield scarring-like patterns, I guess. Would be the word. Is this in the room? Oh, no, okay. All right, so just some examples of some mechanism of injuries that you might see. So this is those rear end. So got rear-ended, probably hit another car on the front end. One thing that we're always taking note of is how much intrusion into the passenger compartment. How much was the outside pushed in? If it's more than 12 inches or a foot, that's very high mechanism of injury. That's something like if you're dealing with level 1, level 2, level 3, and you need to figure out if it's like a high level trauma on scene, that's something that can clue you in of how severe that patient is. So any kind of intrusion into the vehicle, if there's any kind of death in the passenger compartment, even if it's not your patient, say their passenger died, that's a high mechanism of injury. This is that T-bone. This one, known for tearing aortas. So someone gets T-boned, everything moves to the side, their heart moves to the side while it's in, and it'll tear their aorta. So that's a big one, but significant intrusion. So those are things that you want to look at.
This automatically levels them as a level 1 trauma.
Yeah.
Even if you get there and they're like, no, I'm perfectly fine, like my arm hurts. This picture over here, because of how much intrusion is into this passenger compartment, automatically makes them a level 1 trauma in the world of trauma centers. They could have nothing wrong with them physically, but just from that, it makes them a level 1 trauma. So they have a very, very high index of suspicion.
Because this one
Yeah.
goes into the back.
Yeah.
So, always better to get checked out because we don't know things. Adrenaline hides a lot of things. These are the patients that you want to really try and convince to go.
Yeah.
They can turn on you pretty quick.
I've had one of these before this T-bone accident. And like Becca said, he was walking around on scene. He's like, no, man, my leg just hurts. My leg just hurts. He's walking around. Like, well, your motor is 75 yards down the road. Like, we should probably go get checked out. And he's like, no. Well, I finally talked him into going. And he's walking around. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. 2 miles from the ER, I lost radial pulses. His blood pressure went in the tank. He went altered. He ended up having a fractured pelvis and was bleeding out into his pelvis. So they will get you if you're not paying attention. Those kind of accidents will come back to bite you in the butt. So
I know we preach HIPAA around here, but if you're sent like to the receiving facility, I take pictures of the vehicle so I can show them. Because sometimes those people are like walking around, yeah, I'm fine. And then I'm like, go look at their car and they're like, okay, they'll kind of take you a little bit more seriously.
A little alternative to that is if you have the patient's phone, use their camera to take pictures of it, so it stays with them and you're not hurting.
Yes, and they can send it to their insurance later. All right, so rotational impact, the car either gets hit from the front or the back and it causes them to spin. So,
AKA the Georgia State Patrol pit maneuver.
yeah. So this initial impact right here where the red arrow is, it will cause other impacts. So that car starts to spin and then that car hits whatever it's going to hit on the other way. So whether that's like turning and rolling, whether it's just turning going into a ditch, this can cause multiple other impacts. So falls, as an adult, it's greater than 20 feet. So if they fall greater than a height of 20 feet, that's considered a high mechanism of injury. That would be a level 1 trauma. If they're under 15 years old, it's 2 to 3 times the child's height. So kind of see how high they fell from and then kind of, okay, that's 2 times the child height, 3 times. This would make them a level 1 trauma as well. Kids are pretty resilient though. I mean, it's still gonna label them as a level 1 trauma, but we had a kid, a 3-year-old, that fell out of a 2nd-story window. We're like, oh my goodness, this is a level 1. Took him to the pediatric trauma center and the doc's like, yeah, they're bendy. Like, I'm not even concerned about it at all.
Yeah. He's like, they bounce.
Yeah, we're like freaking out, like, oh, the kid. And then the doc's like, yeah, whatever.
He's like, yeah, they bounce. The reason why adults frick themselves up is because they like tense up and catch themselves and they break all kinds of stuff. They're like, kids just bounce. They're fine. Like, all right.
Okay. So whenever we're talking about falls, how high did the patient fall from? The little kid that rolled off the bed, is it grandpa that tripped over something and had a ground level fall? What kind of surface did they fall onto? So carpet, did they fall into a pile of laundry? Did they fall on hardwood floor, concrete? and then what parts of the patient hit the surface. So for adults, a lot of times we see like hand, wrist stuff because they're trying to catch themselves. But sometimes it's head stuff. Kids, big things, their heads are huge, so they always fall head first on anything. And if anything interrupted the fall. So like for example, we had a guy that fell 15 feet out here and he was wearing a harness. So he fell 15 feet and the harness caught him and it like pulled him up like as he fell. So he had a lot of like bruising. It looked like seatbelt signs on his like arms and his groin and stuff. That's still significant. 15 feet is significant for a 60-year-old. And then for him to be caught by something like a harness, like that can still cause its own kinds of injuries. So it's always important to kind of describe how they fell, get that information if someone witnessed it, or if they can tell you. That's always good. All right, so penetrating trauma, this is the injury caused by an object that passes through the skin or body. So knife injuries, gunshot injuries, rebar, impale injuries, that's all penetrating trauma. Piece of glass in the eye, that's a penetrating trauma. So it's classified by the velocity. So low velocity is knife injuries. Make sure if you're going on a knife injury patient, always try and like have them describe the knife that went into them. Because sometimes you can have these little tiny paring knives or big old machete. You know, there's a few different kinds of injuries that can be caused. Our medium velocities are handguns, and then high velocities like rifle. So here is an example of what the bullet does as it enters your body.
You have somebody intimately familiar?
Yes, yes. So bullet comes in, it creates a temporary cavity, so it kind of makes everything blow out. There's like a lot of force behind it. And then there's a permanent cavity, so what actually stays open. So even though someone gets shot in the shoulder, there's a chance that it could cause a lot of internal trauma. There's also a chance that that bullet kind of ricochets around inside. I've had people that were shot in the chest and the bullet like rested in their spine. I've had patients that have tried to off themselves with like a 22 and the bullet just literally bounced around in their head. So they were still alive, but like nobody's home kind of thing. It just sheared their brain. So it's important to kind of like figure out maybe the path that it could have taken. I think Calvin's the perfect example for that.
We have permission from Calvin, so
Yes.
we're not breaking any HIPAA laws to talk about
Yeah.
his
So
situation.
where he was shot in like lower abdomen or like higher up on the abdomen, but not like into the rib cage.
Upper right quadrant.
Yeah, upper right
Upper
quadrant.
right quadrant.
So we're like, yeah, liver, we're worried about liver and guts, right? But his lung was collapsed. So that bullet going through his body created extra force, possibly caused lung damage. Then when his blood pressure dropped, we were like, okay, we need a needle to decompress him. Even though he wasn't shot directly into the lung, it can cause other problems.
Another thing to realize with gunshots is they're not always going to be messy. So depending on where they're shot, how close in proximity that bullet is, there's a lot of heat on that bullet, so it can cauterize a lot of stuff as it's going through. But then on top of that, depending on what it hits as it's going through, I've seen, people shot in the leg that are just absolute disasters as far as like blood everywhere. And I've seen, people shot in the chest or head that have hardly any blood anywhere. So again, Calvin's a perfect example. He wasn't bleeding almost at all. And so when we got on scene for him, there was very minimal blood in the area that he was. He was still bleeding some, but he got shot from this far away, right? And so a lot of the blood, I'm sure, got cauterized as it was going through. And then he kind of got lucky because I don't think that the hollow point that he got shot with actually expanded. So he, until after it left his body, so it could have caused a significantly more damage than it did, but in such close proximity, it didn't expand and kill the crap out of him. So,
There was a bunch of goop on the couch.
There's some goop.
There was some goop on the couch. It's all right, the dog cleaned it.
Yeah. Okay, so blunt force trauma, this is like something's hitting the body. It's not actually penetrating, it's hitting the body. So this bruising style is something you'll see a lot with seatbelts. So that seatbelt sign across the lower abdomen, that also puts them in level 1 trauma criteria. If you see any kind of bruising across the bottom of their belly, or even on the top of their belly, depending on where they have their seatbelt. So this is something that can easily be overlooked, especially when we're out there and you're like, I don't really want to go, just check me out. Like, it's kind of awkward to be like, hey, pull your shirt up, I want to look at your chest and belly. But it's something that we need to be doing, because this can be a small sign of something major going on inside. So blunt force trauma, very dangerous. To put it into perspective, like the city of Atlanta, most trauma centers, so they have a rule that if you bring in someone with penetration trauma, like a gunshot wound or a knife stab, the patient has to have lost their pulses 15 minutes before the trauma doctors lay their eyes on them for them to do interventions. Whereas if you bring someone in that has blunt force trauma, they were hit by a car, they were punched with a car to the chest with a baseball bat or something weird, the patient that has blunt force trauma has to code immediately in front of the trauma doctors. So this is something that can affect a lot of things, and really bad blunt force trauma basically turns your organs to mush. So it's important to keep a high index of suspicion anytime you go out on a car accident, any kind of bruising, because sometimes all you see is bruising, and you're not seeing a bunch of blood everywhere, and they're walking around talking to you, but this might be the only thing you see, and that can be very dangerous. All right, nature of illness. So this is the reason the patient called EMS. So you ask them, why did you call EMS today? What's going on? And they say, I'm dizzy. That's your nature of illness, is dizziness. This information can be obtained from anybody that called 911, whether it was the patient, family members, bystanders, whatever's going on. So this is your nature of illness. So this is where we start talking about how many patients. So our number of patients. If you have something like a hazmat situation or multiple cars involved in an accident, this is something we're trying to obtain. I wouldn't just walk up to Rand and be like, how many patients? I'm gonna actually go around and try and count them. Unless there's someone on scene that kind of has their poop in a group, and they can be like, yeah, there's 5 people over there. And then,
You're never gonna have that.
yeah, you're never gonna have that. So by definition, a mass casualty incident, multiple casualty incident, is there's more patients than there are providers. So if it's just Chaz and I and there's 4 patients on scene, that's considered our MCI.
Yeah.
So can we handle 4 patients? It depends, right? Because if everybody's walkie-talkie, they are all just in a car, someone's got ankle pain, someone's got wrist pain, we can handle all of that. But we have multiple people unconscious, just Chaz and I aren't gonna cut it, right? So make sure that you have additional resources en route to you, even if before you even know, I got called out to a mine bus accident a few months ago. If I would have known it was a mine bus, I would have called multiple more people. I was just told it was an accident. So as I roll up on scene, I see a mine bus out there, and I'm like, well, hopefully this isn't too bad, because it's just me and my partner, who was Calvin at the time. Yeah.
Oh, there's a van that wrecked on that area. That's cool. We pull up and there's a whole ass mine bus.
Yeah.
Same thing. We had a school bus accident out here last year, school out of Reno, and luckily everybody was fine. But when that call come out, it said they had 24 patients. We have 3 goddamn ambulances. What the frick are we gonna do with 24 patients? So the second that call come out, we put out a mass casualty protocol to MedX, Reach. We sent out text messages. We had all 3 of our ambulances staffed, and we had every air resource in the surrounding area on standby. We didn't transport a single goddamn person out of there. They were all fine. But that's, yeah, you don't know that. All you get is you got 24 patients and a school bus just rolled over. It didn't roll over, but That's what it come out as.
I will say, if you're doing scenarios with us, and there's a chance that you might need ALS, just call them early. Because if you're sitting there doing something in your scenario and you're like, well, where's ALS? And I'm like, you never call for them. So now you have to wait 20 minutes. In your scenario, you're now waiting 20 minutes. Call them early and cancel them if you, or if you don't need them. All right, what questions do you have? Yes.
It was just you guys, and there was a whole bunch of patients. Did you just feel like triage?
Mm-hmm.
So it was worse to figure it out.
Yeah. So we'd be calling additional resources before anybody got there. We would triage.
So like a perfect example, right? Me and Becca one night got paged out to a drug club in Atlanta for 9 people shot. By the time we got there, a bunch of them had like jumped in cars and taken off to the hospital. There was 3 people on scene, 3 people that were shot on scene. One of them was dead. One of them was like real fricked up, and one of them was shot in the leg. That's a perfect triage situation, right? One of them dead, you write it off, call it quits. One guy's real messed up, he needs to get out of here. One guy shot in the leg, he can wait. Until you factor in the fact that we had an entire group of people around us because East Point Police Department didn't know how to control a scene. The second we get there, Becca's getting screamed at and cussed out because she's not moving fast enough and this girl's dead in the parking lot. So what do? You divide and conquer. So I told Becca, I was like, you go deal with that. I'll deal with everything else, right? At that point, you have to divide and figure something out. So Becca literally just sat there and did compressions on a dead girl for no reason. We weren't transporting her. This is a mass casualty incident. But did that just to control the situation because the scene was not safe, but we couldn't go nowhere, right? Becca did that, and I ran around and found the rest of the patients. And we didn't even know the guy that was shot in the leg was there until like freaking almost 10 minutes later. He just popped up. He freaking come hobbling out from behind a drugstore. We're like, the frick did you come from? He was like, they started shooting. I got scared. And now he's freaking shot in the leg. And I'm like, wonderful. Love that. So we added him to the count, right? So these scenes are ever evolving, but you just kind of adapt to them the best way you can.
Now, if you guys want to take a quick break, go to the bathroom, get some water.
Yeah. How goes it? Everything around the office going good?
It's been busy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Getting that time of the year.
Budgets. I hate budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah, Merlin's got tacos, another great brain doesn't like numbers. My brain doesn't like numbers.
You guys try that new truck?
Yeah, sucks.
That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. They got burrito ramen. Pretty good.
Their burrito tacos. All their burrito stuff.
Yeah, that sounds terrible. I do not envy your job.
Yeah.
Like numbers don't bother me. I like numbers, but just a mass influx of crap in like a few months.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me look.
Yeah, it's rough.
I go out there and
The what?
hook truck, whatever, fish
Go to
truck.
Oregon and have like fresh.
Yeah, bro, I can't eat fish out here. Like they do the crab thing at the Owl.
Oh.
I grew up too close to the coast. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we went to Oregon, we did like that.
Yeah, bro. We went to,
You'll never
when we
eat
did our
that
Oregon
same.
trip. Oregon and Alaska. We went up to Alaska September, August.
We're going on an Alaska cruise in July.
Yeah,
I'm so
that made me
excited.
all fat and happy. Y'all going to Whittier? That one of y'all stops?
No, we're going to Sagway, Skagway, Ketchikan, Juneau, I think. I don't know for sure if there's Juneau. And then Victoria, Canada is one of the stops too.
Whittier's pretty cool. I know it's a stop for couple of the cruise lines. It's a pretty cool little place. It's the whole town lives in like one apartment building. Like they don't
That's
have
cool.
like a handful of houses there. The whole town lives in like an apartment building because they get so much snow out there. They put everything, like the post office is in there, the grocery store, like everything's in the one building.
Then they have a tunnel going from the building to the stairs that you get out.
Yeah, like it's a one-way tunnel, and so it has like a little arm. So whenever you get
That's
there,
crazy.
you like pull up and you wait on like the traffic, and then they open the arm and you go down a railroad. It's a railroad track that leads all the way to the other side. And you just drive through the middle of this mountain, and you come out the other side and you're just in the town. That was one of the best freaking crab sandwiches or lobster sandwiches. No, that one was the salmon. The salmon, that was one of the best salmon sandwiches that I think that I have ever had. Ah, so good. So good. Then we went to Oregon. What was the name of that little town, the little fishing town? Bandon, Oregon. It's like a little fishing community right there on the coast.
I've never been there.
It was so cool. They have like the wood carving.
Yeah. There's like a little shack right on the water, like right next to all the boats. And they did the crab like sandwiches. Mm. We're going back.
Yeah.
Becca don't even like fish.
No.
Huh?
The beach is pretty.
Yeah, that's where we stayed.
I used to haul logs from the turkeys and lumber out.
Oh, really? Yeah, we went up, we drove across California to hit 101 and then just drove all the way up 101 to Forks last year, like this time. And it was amazing. It was
There was no
outside of the
people.
touristy scene. The food was good. We got a like hell of a discount on one of the hotels.
Yeah, we stayed in Gold Beach in a hotel on the beach, like freaking 50 yards from the beach. And it was like $60.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's something about it. I was so sick. I started getting a tickle in my throat like after driving out there. And I was like, I'm not gonna let this ruin it. I was so sick the whole time. It was still fun.
Yeah, it was a good time.
I'm not going to go.
A raccoon stole one of our freaking shaker cups full of protein.
Yeah, I put like protein powder in there just so you could like put water in it later. We sat it out. We were car camping majority of the time. We woke up and like we had a Coke Zero can and like been into, and then one of our shaker bottles was just missing.
You just took off with it.
Jacked up raccoon running around in freaking Washington right now.
Yeah, it was raccoon. But yes,
It was fun. Good time. Good time.
So I went on an Alaska cruise. The only complaint I had was that it's very like demographic. So it's all there. And when I say old, I mean like white.
Yeah, I'm not really much of a cruise person. There's a lot of people.
we did a cargo or a charter boat to Oregon.
I only almost back to 90%. I'm like, it has to be back in the 90%.
Yeah, we did that in Alaska.
I got a freaking 78 on this one.
Oh, really? Yeah, when we went to Alaska, we did like a little boat thing where they have like a bunch of seats and you go out in the boat and go out to one of the like the big glaciers out there. And we were like chasing around the freaking orca whales and those like otters and seals and freaking.
And I look back and forth. This one I got wrong. I
Pretty
was
cool.
thinking 4 or 10.
We got all kinds of, there was like a whole like school of the like orca whales. So there was like a handful of like the big ones and there was like a little baby one and it was like freaking this big. And, like, they were like jumping out doing flips and stuff. It was really
Oh, I got that one wrong
Yeah.
too. I did
Yeah.
drop in a heart rate.
Yeah.
Becca. Sure, go to that.
No.
On this one.
I got this question wrong
I
too.
did too. I thought it was a drop in heart rate.
Explain that to us.
So once you get like kiddos will have a drop in heart rate if they're not getting oxygenated. But the thing is like if you're putting pressure inside someone's chest, you're filling it with positive pressure, right? So we were talking about like your IVC, your inferior vena cava, gets a lot of pressure put on it. So whenever you're bagging somebody like too much, it pushes too much pressure on the IVC and it causes their blood pressure to go down.
Oh, and that's why like CPAP, they're really particular about like putting it on them if
Wasn't
their
there
blood
one very
pressure's.
similar, and it's cardiac output.
Yeah, so it affects your cardiac output.
Okay,
it's
that's what
coming
threw me
out.
off.
Yeah.
Because I was
I got that
earlier
wrong in
I
the
had one and I
practice
was like,
questions too.
there's no cardiac output on here, and then I was like, increase in blood pressure, maybe no heart rate.
Yeah,
And then I went back and looked, and I'm like, I did miss that one.
yeah.
Okay, that
Yeah,
makes
those
sense.
two go hand in hand, so decrease in cardiac output and blood pressure like follow each other.
Follow each other. Okay.
Yeah, so like if you have a
That's what
decrease in
threw me
cardiac output, you have a drop in blood pressure.
So even though it's a negative like outcome, you still do it.
Yeah, so you're
you
just
have to-
monitoring your patient, and then if you're like if you're bagging and you're watching their blood pressure down, you need to watch how much you're actually putting into it.
Okay. So
So
like
that's-
lighten it up a
Okay.
little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like squeeze the bag a little bit less.
Okay.
On Saturday, we don't have our monitor in here, we have, it hooks onto our BBM, it's a little blue thing, and as you squeeze the bag, it tells you on the monitor exactly how much Tylenol you're giving them.
Oh,
So that's pretty cool.
that's cool.
Bro, your dad's a felon.
My dad,
Yeah.
what do you do?
I was talking to freaking Aiden.
Oh,
Yeah, he said he clocked him at 88.
I don't know, my dad last night, he's like, I'm getting older. He was driving through Battle Mountain, and he's like, he called me back, he's like, I threw your name around and got out of a ticket. Of course you did.
It was freaking Aiden.
All right, so primary assessment. So on our sheets, I think it's up there, primary assessment. So this is all your ABCs. So any kind of medical patient, you're gonna do ABC. Any kind of trauma patient or cardiac arrest, you do CAB. So pretty much everybody you're gonna be doing ABC on. So the only thing that changes, we were talking about controlling blood, that's the C thing, so we'll talk about all that. So our objectives, we're gonna learn the components, which is your ABC. Or identify which assessments to perform first. So what's gonna kill the patient first and which ones are you gonna assess first. We're gonna learn how to assess the mental status of a patient, which is perfect because Calvin's in here. He loves assessing mental statuses. So, here's your sheet. This is what the little section that we're looking at. So the primary survey. So the 1, 5, 3. So these are the 3 that we're talking about. The verbalizes general impression. So this is where we walk in. If I was to be doing this assessment-wise, I would walk in. I'd say I look at my patient. How does my patient look? So this is like a doorway assessment. You look at your patient. Are they pale? Are they sweating? Are they in a tripod position? Are they unconscious on the floor? Are they sitting here talking to you like I'm talking to you now? Did they meet you at the door? Are they standing on the front porch smoking a cigarette? Like, what does your patient look like? This is where whoever's doing your test or running you through the scenario will say, they'll describe how they look, and you'll say, okay, they're sick or not sick. This is where you need to decide whether they're sick or not sick. That's always subject to change, right? Because you can have somebody that's like, I got stuck by a bee 5 minutes ago, and they're talking to you, and then all of a sudden they lose their airway. So that's subject to change, but during your general impression, you say, okay, is my patient sick or not sick? So, in EMS, you get really good. They did a study where they pulled paramedics and doctors and had them like identify sick or not sick patients, and paramedics were better at it. Because we deal with so many scenarios where a doctor usually knows what's going on with the patient before they walk in, whereas EMS has to make that split-second decision, right? Like you got phoned out for chest pain, and this person got shot in the chest. Are they sick or not sick? Like we're better at identifying a sick patient.
There's a general rule of thumb that states within 30 seconds of me or Becca or Calvin walking in and making eye contact or looking at your patient, 30 seconds after you lay eyes on that patient, you should already be in your head saying, we need to go, or we can be here for a second. Again, that's subject to change because they might be like, oh yeah, I feel like I got gas in my chest. right? And you're like, oh, okay, we, you know, got a little acid reflux. Let me check your heart real quick, and they're having a massive heart attack. Now you're subject to go, right? But within the first 30 seconds, you should be able to walk in and look at a patient and determine pretty quickly whether they're like super sick or whether you got time to sit there and like chat with them.
And sometimes it's the other way around. Like sometimes you walk in and they look super sick, and then you're kind of doing more of your assessment, and then you realize something, they're really not that sick. Like they just have an upset tum, but they're sweaty and pale, but all they're complaining of is abdominal pain. So it kind of can go both ways. So then we determine responsiveness and level of consciousness. So, hey, are you awake? Are you talking to me? Are you confused? This is what we're going to have to. And then our chief complaint. So what is the patient complaining of? You could have gotten called for chest pain, and you get there and they say, oh, I actually just have leg pain. So their chief complaint is leg pain.
What's a good way, just off the top of your head, that you can determine responsive level and chief complaint just immediately?
For pain.
Yeah.
Right, perfect. I walk in, hey, how are you? What's going on today? Right there, if you start talking to me, I know that you're alert. I can tell your level of consciousness, and you're going to tell me what's wrong with you.
You also assess.
And you assess their airway at the same time. Subconsciously, you assess their airway, right? Just that simple question, you can determine how with it they are and what's going on with them, right?
All right, so spinal motion restriction. This goes right here, the consider stabilization of the spine. So we're going to do that even before we really get on scene, but we're going to think about it like as we're walking up. So we go off dispatch notes, like, okay, this person fell. Am I going to consider stabilization? Yes. This person has difficulty breathing and they're sitting in their recliner. Am I going to consider stabilization? No. So we're going to treat the patient's life-threatening conditions without aggravating a potential spine injury. So we're not going to backboard everybody. We're not going to toss seat collars on everybody, but we're still going to treat them. If they're unconscious and we're concerned about C-spine stuff, we're going to lay them flat. We're not going to tie them to a piece of hard plastic, but we're going to have it in the back of our mind. Okay, how am I going to open this patient's airway? National Registry loves to be like, okay, you fell, and as you walk up on scene, you're like, I'm maintaining C-spine on their head, and I'm going to talk to the patient. They love to do that, so that's what they're talking about, like maintaining spinal restriction on their head and neck. So you hold manual stabilization first, and then you throw a C-collar on them if that's what you want to do, or your guidelines tell you to. So protocols, SMR stands for spinal motion restriction. They're talking about C-collars. All right, this is that general impression. So this is that look test. So you walk in, how does your patient look? Are they tripoding? Are they sitting there just fine? If they're grabbing their chest like this is called Levine's sign. That's should make you suspicious for any kind of cardiac. If they're having like chest pain, they usually do this. I remember it because everybody sees Adam Levine and they're like, so that's how I remember the Levine sign. Or a tripod position. So if you get a scenario and you have a mannequin sitting in front of you and your proctor is like, yeah, your patient shows Levine's sign. That's what they're talking about. It's indicative of chest pain. And then we're going to identify any obvious trauma. So any major bleeding, we're going to stop. So if you look at the patient and you see like a big pool of blood, first thing you do is stop that bleeding. That's part of your identify obvious trauma or your apparent life threats. Major bleeding falls under that apparent life threats. So, yes. So our general impression, are they sick? Are they not sick? Like Chad said, within the first 30 seconds of you seeing the patient, you should have in your head, okay, sick, not sick. And it's okay to like be not fully correct in your assessment, but we always suggest that you practice doing it because the more patients you see, the more you're going to be better at it, right? So everybody in here has had that first patient where like, yeah, they're really sick, and they're really not that sick. It happens to everybody, but it's always good to form that impression.
Mm-hmm.
So assess the environment. Is it really hot outside? Is it cold outside? How does their house look? Does it look like they take care of themselves? Does it look like they live in a hoarder's house? Usually it's that one. So we always assess their environment. Do they have a bunch of animals running around? Are they complaining of difficulty breathing and you walk in and all you can see is like dog hair floating around and smell animals? That could be exacerbating their problem. So this is where we kind of set our priorities for care and transport. Like, yeah, we're gonna stay and play, or we're gonna load and go, treat and eat, whatever you want to call it. So you walk up on scene and you see this. What's your first like impression? She hit her head. Yeah, she's sitting up though. She's looking around. She's not unconscious. She's with it enough to have her hand on her bleeding knee, right? So those are things that we're looking at. Her color, her skin color looks pretty decent from a distance. Obviously that might change as we get closer. The other things that you want to assess. What about this guy? Tripod. No, you can't breathe. Right, so his color still looks okay, but if he's tripoding like that, like those are things that you want to take mental note of as you're walking into a house or anywhere on the scene.
What do you do if you walk into a house and like a grown-up is unconscious and it's like little kids?
So that's usually where I get police involved. If I have more people coming, I'll kind of assign one of them to the kids until like officers can be on scene. We've had that a couple of times.
Yeah, and typically, especially around here, like the deputies are really good about being like, I'll bring the kid and just meet y'all down there, and they'll put them in the patrol car or whatever. You know, they'll ask mom, like, do you have a car seat? If they're unresponsive, they'll just look around, find a car seat, put it in the back of the patrol car, they'll bring them down. So they're pretty good about that around here. So.
All right, so we're forming an impression. So we're gonna look, listen, smell, and feel. And we'll walk
I can smell that.
I can smell
I
that.
can smell that first picture.
Bath and Body Works ain't gonna fix it how it smells.
Exactly. So everybody's favorite pathway house. There's a single pathway right here for the patient to walk around. The patient always collapses somewhere way back in the house. It's never
Convenient.
Yeah, it's never convenient. Exactly, right. They gotta be in the back, or they still have a little bit of space. So, look at the patient. How do they look? How are they positioned? Listen. So if you can hear any kind of moaning, screaming, snoring, gurgling, those are things that you need to fix right away. Smells. So not only, obviously this is going to smell, this is hazardous. I would consider this a hazmat situation. But any kind of hazardous fumes, so like that other video is a perfect example, right? So chlorine gas, that's going to have a smell to it. Propane has a smell to it. Any kind of like gas generated heaters, generators, those all have like their own specific smell. And sometimes like your patient will like off gas and you'll smell it on your patient even if they meet you outside. So take note of all of that stuff. Decay, that's a big one. Once you smell it once, you smell it, you'll never forget that smell. Yeah, so decomposing bodies have their own smell, but then also like alive patients with really bad pressure wounds, pressure ulcers, pressure sores, you will smell that too.
You can smell those decubitus ulcers, those big gnarly sores that people get on their back, like the older people get on their, you can smell them from the front door. Same thing with like urine. When you smell UTIs, you will smell them from the front door. Same thing with GI bleeds. When you have smelled GI bleeds, you will smell them from the front door. So there's certain clues when you hit the front door where you're like, frick. And you know your call's about to go real south. And you don't have to look at them.
Oh, C. diff.
Oh, C. diff.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
C. diff? It's like a bacterial.
Colostrum difficile something.
Yeah, it's like a stomach infection, and it gets in your poop, and it gets everywhere. Listen, that's one thing that I will put on all the things for it because it is very easily transmittable and you'll get it. Like,
Just don't lick their food. Don't let it fling in your eye or thing. The
I
only
will
thing that kills
not.
it. Yeah. Yeah, you walk in like the guys on ET.
Full hazmat suit with a respirator underneath it.
Yeah, the only thing that kills C. diff is bleach. So our little purple top wipes, as much as I love them, they don't kill C. diff. So we have orange top wipes that are bleach. That's the only thing that'll kill C. diff. And once you smell it, you know exactly what it is. You walk in and they're like, I've been pooping for the last 5 days.
Mom
And
would
you're
be
like,
like, yeah, I've been taking antibiotics for a while too.
Yeah.
Also a good sign.
yeah.
Like, I've been taking penicillin and now I just have nonstop diarrhea. No.
Hey, God, me again.
Yeah. More hates me today.
Yeah, call an adult. And then we want to feel, so ambient temperature, that can lead you to what's going on with the patient too. So heat strokes, hypothermia, even in a house, so like MEMA, even just like ambient temperature, older patients have a hard time regulating their internal body temperature. So if they're laying on a cold floor for a long time, chances are their internal body temp is pretty chilly. So these are things you take note of. Obviously, if it's blistering hot outside, you're gonna know before you even get there. Like you've probably been dealing with it all day, so that sucks. All right, so whenever we assess mental status, we use something called AVPU. So does anybody know what AVPU stands for? Alert,
Pain, and unresponsive.
Good job. Yeah, so alert, I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm alert. Verbal, they're either closed, they're not responding. And then I say, hey buddy, what's going on? And they'll open their eyes or they'll talk to me, that's verbal. Painful is like nothing. I'm sitting there, hey, how's it going today? Blah, blah, blah. And they're not talking to me, so I do a pain response.
4-finger banger.
Wake
up.
Yeah, so that's our painful response. And then unresponsive, obviously, we tried all the things, shouting, pain, and they're not responsive. So alert, we're checking to see if they're oriented as well. So if we say a patient is A&O times 4, we've asked them the 4 questions in relation to person, place, time, and event. So what's your name? Where are you at? What month is it right now? Why am I here right now? Or I like to ask them like, who's this person that called me? Oh, that's my husband. Okay, well, what's their name? Like, that's how we assess these things. You'll hear all of the questions. How many dimes in a dollar is a common one. Dimes in a dollar.
Yeah, people like to ask confusing questions.
Yeah, dimes in a dollar. Who's president? Is Mickey Mouse a duck or a goose? Like, all the questions.
So and inevitably, you're gonna be like, what day of the week is it? They're gonna be like, oh, it's Saturday. You'll be like, no, it's Tuesday. Just kidding, it's Saturday.
Good job.
Yeah,
Like,
good
you're
job.
Yeah, exactly.
I do it every time.
Yeah.
I'm like, what day of the week is it? And they'll tell me, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
right.
it is.
Yeah, I like to ask like, what holiday did we recently celebrate? So like they'll say Valentine's Day, because that was the last one. So that kind of puts the place. The quarters and dollar, I don't really know which one of these that it hits. I don't think it does.
It's just a computer.
Yeah.
I think it is too.
Like,
Yeah, this is super secret stuff. So if they're only answering 2 of these questions appropriately, they would be A&O times 2 or A&O times 3. So they need to answer those 4 questions appropriately. That's what we're talking about whenever we're talking about getting a refusal. We want to make sure that they're alert and oriented. So we're asking them those questions. Verbal, they open their eyes to verbal. Painful, you hit them. So there's a couple different ways. You can do the sternal rub, you can do the trap squeeze, you can do one where you kind of flick their eyelashes. That one's less painful. There's one you pinch like up here by their eyebrow. Apparently that's painful.
You take a pen and rub it across the nail beds.
Yeah, so if you take a pen right on someone's nail bed and hold it like this and just squeeze, you'll get a painful response.
What's that?
Don't go flicking them on the forehead.
That looks bad. Yeah. And then unresponsive. So don't sit there and sternal rub the crap out of your patients. I've had patients, the fire department was there before me, and they had 6 people all try their own sternal rub, and they got a big old like red mark on their chest. Do one, fine. Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah, so kiddos, we'll learn in the later chapter, like all the appropriate, if I walk in and a child's screaming, they're alert. Okay, so if they're screaming, if they're unresponsive, gently flick the bottom of their feet. Don't do like, don't beat the child, but like flick them on the bottom of the feet, give them some stimulus. If they cry, that's an expected response. Or you can try and be like, hey baby, and kind of tap their feet. That's a good way to check if they're responsive or not. Yeah, don't go.
What about like doing like the pin test, like rubbing your pin up their foot and then they clench?
Oh yeah. So what's the age on that? I can't remember what age it goes away.
It's like
3 years. Yeah, you could do that like a Babinski reflex. Do know that if you do that on an adult and they have a positive Babinski on their feet, that's a bad day.
That is a spinal reflex, so it could be unconscious and stay awake. So it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, so I don't know, just trying to stimulate them a little bit, but
Just pick them up and go.
it's a sign of spinal cord injury in an adult.
Yeah, if you do this and
Their toes do the thing. It's bad.
I will kick you in the teeth.
That's a fair response. That's what I've been trying to say.
You saved my life in the back of your ambulance. I see my shoes are off. We're not done.
look, if I know you, we try to be polite. Like, in all fairness, we didn't get Calvin naked in the back of the truck. So, if we know you, we try to be a little polite. I mean, we had him convinced that everybody in Battle Mountain has seen his junk, but nobody actually had. We had like a whole get well of soon card, and it said like nice package BMGH nurses. It was like a whole thing.
Yeah.
But nobody actually did that. We try to like preserve dignity of people, but
You're bad trauma, you get trauma naked.
yeah,
That's just-
like I'm gonna see your junk. So have clean underwear and socks on, because chances are I'm gonna see it.
Yeah, my grandma had a heart attack. They shaved her hoop.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She's
I like
like,
that.
why did they say we were gonna shave my? I was like,
And that's where communication with your patient comes in.
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
that is one thing I've noticed about Elko.
Yeah, you never know when that thing come in.
That's one thing I've noticed about Elko. When we bring STEMI patients over there, I always warn them, I pre-warn them. Listen, they're gonna get you naked, they're gonna shave your junk, that's just how it's gonna be. Sometimes they don't warn you, they just like walk in and they pull your pants down, you know.
Wow. I didn't sign up for the spa.
They didn't go. I think they do just
Because they take a wire and stick it up in your femoral artery and run it up to your heart.
It's a lot faster.
A little guide wire.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they'll go in the wrist, but they always prep their just in case.
They do that to my mom all the time. She's always been in and out of the hospital.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they get down there and shave you.
she's like, I hate to talk to you.
Yeah, sometimes they just forget to talk to the patient.
Yep. We used to tell the people in Atlanta that all the time. We get the guys like the big gangsters that was shot. They're like, listen, man, just so you know, you get a finger in the butt. They're like, what? They call it the Grady handshake. They walk in, as soon as they roll it, bloop, yeah.
They wouldn't do it on everybody though, but like level 1 traumas, you got it.
Yeah, you got a finger in the butt.
So we were telling some guy once.
He wasn't even, he was like a level 3 trauma.
He wasn't getting the finger in the butt, but Chaz convinced him, he said, whenever they roll you, you need to yell out, because whenever they do it, they say good tone, no blood, right? So Chaz is sitting there like talking to me, like, as soon as you get in there and the doctor started assessing you, just start yelling good tone, no blood, and then we'll put their
So they were like going through the little assessment thing, and they went to like roll him over to check his spine. As soon as they rolled him, he was like, good tone, no blood. Everybody cracked up. I was like, I like it.
have been all the doctors. The nurse was like, what the?
Yeah, you try to make light of the situation.
He was probably sweating too.
No, yeah, he thought he was catching a finger.
Yeah, they lose it, but I mean, still. Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah, they don't get you. They're like, no, don't do that. Boop.
Then they never warn the patient because they don't want them to tense up while they do it.
Yeah, I just roll them over. Yeah.
All right, back on track. The chief complaint. So this is the
Finger.
patient's description as to why EMS was called. Obviously, this can change if a bystander calls because they're unresponsive, or a bystander calls because they seen grandma get dizzy and faint and then wake up, and grandma didn't want you guys to come, but the family member's like, oh, she had a dizzy spell and she fainted. That's the chief complaint. So can be specific, can be vague. They can be very, very specific. Sometimes you ask and they're like, well, it all started back in 3rd grade and I fell and tweaked my elbow. Then I went into surgery 10 years later, and they'll just go on this tangent. So I'm going to reel them back in a little bit, but try to listen to what they're saying. So sometimes their chief complaint does not match their actual diagnosis. So chief complaint can be different than what your field diagnosis or your differential diagnosis is going to be. Like that guy I took with a heart attack, his complaint was he had a sore throat, but he was having a giant heart attack. So it might not match the actual diagnosis of the patient. Sometimes we get out there and the patient's really concerned about one thing, but they got like a slew of other things going on that we're more concerned about. But still, we marked that the chief complaint was this. All right, so life threats. Air goes in and out, blood goes round and round. Any deviation is a problem. So any kind of bleeding needs to be stopped immediately. This goes before you even assess their airway or anything. If you see blood spurting or any amount of blood around the patient, assess that first. You want to fix it. You want to stop it. Whether that's wound packing, tourniquet, pressure, that needs to be stopped. So stop bleeding immediately, and then you fix their breathing. That's where you go into your ABCs, right? So breathe for them. Are they not breathing at all? Do they have a pulse? Do you need to start compressions? And then suction out the airway. So if you walk in, you start to hear that gurgling, you notice vomit on the patient's mouth, suction the patient out. Don't wait for them to be like, okay, I'm gonna stop bleeding, I'm gonna do this, and don't wait. Just start clearing their airway. All right, so we're focusing on our life threats. Not breathing at all, we're gonna breathe for them. They're bleeding out, we're going to fix that before anything else. If their heart's not beating, we're going to do start compressions, unless there's obvious signs of death. Then we do our ABCs. So airway and breathing can be a little confusing because you're like, airway is breathing, but it's not always the same thing, right? So you can have an airway problem that's not really related to a breathing problem. They kind of go hand in hand, but it's something like clearing out the airway, and then you want to assess the patient. So how did their airway look? Is it patent? Are they able to talk to you? Are they having a hard time talking because their voice is muffled? Do they have swelling in their airway? Do they have something stuck in their airway? What's going on with their airway? All right, the order of ABC we talked about. So if the patient has signs of life, it's ABC. If they appear lifeless, no pulse or major trauma is present, we go CAB. So we want to stop that bleeding. We want to start compressions first. You're not going to start bagging them before you start doing compressions, right? So your primary assessment is your time to do any immediate life-saving interventions. As we're going through these sheets, there is a possibility in real life or even in this scenario where you get a patient that you spend the entirety of the call focusing on the primary assessment, because say that you're really trying to control their airway and it's hard because they're puking or there's a lot of blood in their airway, or you're trying to stop bleeding and you have to have someone holding pressure on it and you just don't have time to do the rest of the assessment. As long as your ABCs are taken care of,
That's what's important, right? So sometimes you might get stuck where you're just stuck in the primary assessment the entire way to the hospital, and that's okay. I think they're still at dispatch. I haven't seen them right back.
Oh, Mikey Lowe's hanging out with the dispatchers.
All right, so primary assessment, if bleeding control and CPR are not required, this is where you switch to your important but less urgent, right? So this is where you start to administer your oxygen. So how I run through this whenever we get to our primary assessment, like BSI, scene safety, blah, blah, C-spine, ALS, all that stuff. General impression, ABPU, life threats, G2 point. I go in my airway and I say, hey, buddy, what's going on today? And as I walk up, if they're talking to me or not, I'm going to toss a pulse ox on their finger. This is where that should be done. Even though on that sheet, the vitals is like more towards the bottom, I'm going to put a pulse ox on because I want a baseline. And if I put oxygen on somebody, I want to see what it was, their oxygen saturation, before I put the oxygen on. So this is where I would toss their pulse ox on their finger. So if they're saying they have a difficulty breathing, I'm going to put them on oxygen. If they're gray, if they look like crap, this is where all of this happens. So this is where you determine whether you're going to put an auto breather on, a nasal cannula, you're going to do all that stuff. Your nebulizer, your breathing treatment, that all comes a little bit later. This is where you just put that initial oxygen on their face. So, airway, you assess it. Is the patient talking to you? Is the baby crying? If it is not open, if you're hearing snoring, if they're not breathing at all, or they're breathing real shallow, and you're hearing like that, like they're trying to breathe through their own tongue, this is where you do your airway maneuvers. So, if you have suspected spinal trauma, how do you open the airway? Good. And if you don't have suspected spinal trauma, how do you open the airway? Good, good. Now learn how to. Then we move on to our breathing. Here's our B part of our ABCs. So rate, rhythm, and quality. Rate being how fast is the patient breathing? Are they breathing in normal rate, which is what? What's our normal rate for an adult?
12 to 20.
12 to 20, good job. If they're breathing too fast, what's that called? Tachypnea. If they're breathing too slow, what's it called? Bradypnea. Good job. If they're not breathing at all.
Yeah.
There it is. What's that called? Apnea or apneic. Good. So then you look at their rhythm. Are they breathing a regular pattern? Are they breathing like irregularly? Are they taking really, really deep breaths and then really shallow breaths and then no breaths and then shallow breaths and then deep breaths? So watch their breathing pattern. Is it regular or is it irregular? Then are they taking adequate breaths? So you feel like looking at the patient, they're taking a good tidal volume. So if I'm sitting there breathing 30 times a minute, really shallow, you'll be able to see that, right? Whereas if I'm breathing 30 times a minute and really, really deep, you can also see that. So those are things that you want to look at whenever you're assessing breathing. So our airway, is it patent? Does it need to be suctioned? What kind of oxygen do they need? Rate, rhythm, quality of their breathing. Hoping you'd be able to see this a little bit. So this breathing pattern is really deep, really fast respirations. They're breathing like, and they're just doing that without passing out, which is pretty impressive. It's called Kussmaul breathing, and we see it in diabetic patients. So somebody whose blood sugar is really, really high, it's called diabetic ketoacidosis. You'll see the Kussmaul breathing like that. So he's trying to breathe off all that extra acid that's built up in his body. And sometimes you'll smell it too. So there's like a genetic thing that some people can smell DKA, some people can't smell it at all. To me, it smells like peach schnapps. A little bottle of peach schnapps. It's like a sweet, fruity smell. Some people just can't smell it at all though. So if you're with a partner that can smell it that day, take a sniff. Sometimes, yeah. When Chaz was doing like keto diets and stuff, and he went into ketosis because of a keto diet, I could smell it. He'd walk in on that's funny breath. If you drink some Mountain Dew. All right, so when to assist with breathing, if the patient is in respiratory arrest with a pulse, so they're apneic and they still have a pulse, you do rescue breaths, which is one breath, how many seconds?
5 to 6.
5 to 6, good. If they're not alert and they have inadequate breathing, so say that they are breathing, they're not alert, and they're breathing 6 times a minute, you need to breathe for them. If they have any kind of alertness with inadequate breathing, again, if they're semi-conscious, they're kind of looking at you, they're kind of moaning and doing their stuff, but they're only breathing 6 to 7 times a minute, or if they're breathing 38 times a minute, that's the time to help back them. And then if they have adequate breathing, but they have signs suggesting respiratory distress or hypoxia that cannot be fixed with other forms of oxygen administration. So say you want to put somebody on CPAP and they're too altered for CPAP, this is where you would actually start bagging them. So if they need some kind of positive pressure ventilation, but they can't handle a CPAP in any way, that's the time to start bagging them. You might get the patient that's like breathing at a rate of 32, but they're like sitting there talking to you and you're like, that's too fast. But sometimes you can coach them to get their breathing down or fix the underlying problem. Like if I walk in and someone's having an asthma attack and they're breathing 38 times a minute, I'm not gonna be like, hold on, I'm gonna bag you, and then give you medicine and then keep bagging you. I'm gonna give them the medicine, and a lot of times that'll bring their breathing, like how many times they're breathing down, because you're fixing the underlying problem. So don't just go throwing a BBM on everybody's face. All right, circulation. We're going to check and control severe bleeding. We're going to assess the patient's skin. So we're also looking, this is like part of our initial look assessment, but usually how this goes for me in a scenario-based, or even in real life. Like say Chaz is my patient, right? I'm going to walk up, I'm going to say, hey buddy, how's it going today?
Trash.
Trash. Okay, his airway's open because he said trash. I'm going to check his breathing. Is he breathing fast or slow? Is he getting good tidal volumes? Is he taking really shallow breaths? And then as I'm talking to him, I'm looking at his skin. I'm gonna say, hey, I'm just gonna feel your pulse real quick. All right, throw pulse ox on. I'm gonna feel for his radial pulse. Airway obstruction. I fixed the problem. So as I'm feeling for a pulse, this tells me a lot of things, right? So I can feel if his pulse is thready or if it's strong. I can feel if it's fast or if it's slow, if it's even there. Sometimes people with really, really low blood pressures, you won't be able to find a radial pulse at all. And then I can also feel his skin. He feels warm, he's not cold. And then like as I pull my hand away, is he clammy? Am I sticking to his hand? Like is he sweaty? So this tells me a lot of things, all just by this 2-minute interaction of, hey, how's it going today? I already got my full ABC assessment done. So that's usually how I do things, even like in real life. I'll just walk in, feel that pulse. It tells me a lot of things right away. If you're suspecting any kind of shock, except for neuroshock, that's another conversation for another day. We're going to treat them for shock. So we're going to lay them flat because we're trying to keep their blood pressure up. We're going to lay them flat, not put them in Trendelenburg. That's how they used to teach it. Yep, supine. We're going to cover them with a blanket to keep them warm, and we're going to give them oxygen. So any kind of shock. The only caveat to the oxygen thing is if they're having a heart attack and they're already satting at 98%. I'm not going to put them on more oxygen. That is your treatment for shock. Supine, keep them warm, give them oxygen. This is the time to do that, is in your ABC part of your assessment. What if I have a patient with really bad chest pain? It's clear to me that they're in some kind of shock. They're gray, they're sweaty, and they're like, yeah, I'm kind of having a hard time breathing. And I go to lay them flat, and they're like, I don't like that, I can't breathe. What am I going to do? I'm going to say, suck it up, you're staying laying flat.
I'm restraining you. What's wrong with
Semi-Fowlers.
Yeah, semi-Fowlers, yeah. So listen to your patient, don't force them to do anything that's uncomfortable for them. A lot of times if someone's in like a cardiogenic shock, they're gonna have fluid buildup in their lungs, and if you lay them flat, they're gonna feel like they're drowning. So just tilt their head up a little bit, still try to keep them warm, and then treat oxygen as needed. And then in kiddos, we're checking for cap refill.
Oh, this is every day.
Oh, yeah.
They're cuddling. So is it less or more than 2 seconds? So we want it to be less than 2 seconds, right? For a kiddo. So pulse, rate, rhythm, and quality. All of this goes under your circulation. So here's the general rule of thumb is a blood pressure less than 80 systolic. This is a general rule of thumb. This is not going to be for every patient, but this is kind of what like it's in the forefront of my mind. If I go to feel for a radial and I can't feel a radial anywhere. So if someone's blood pressure is about less than 80, they'll lose a radial pulse. As you come up, if their blood pressure is less than 70 systolic, they'll lose a brachial pulse. And if their blood pressure is less than 60 systolic, they'll lose a carotid. So you're going to read something somewhere that's like, that's not accurate at all. I will say after 10 years of doing this, it's pretty accurate. You get the few outliers that you can't find a radial pulse and their blood pressure is kind of high. But for the general understanding, if you walk in and someone looks like shit and you go to feel a radial pulse and you can't feel it, chances are their blood pressure is low. Yeah, less than 80 here, 70 here, 60 here or here. So femoral or carotid is where you'll lose at 60. Whenever we start learning about like how to take blood pressures, whenever we're doing like over palp and you're taking a blood pressure over palp, that's kind of a good rule too. If you can't find a radial to do radial over palp, you might have to move up into here. Rate, rhythm, and quality. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it bounding? Is it thready? And by thready, I mean like it's barely there, like you can barely feel it. So determine your priority. This is our stay and play or load and go. So this is the point in your scenario where you would say, okay, this patient is stable or unstable. We need to go now, or we can like stay and play. You know, a little bit, we can just stabilize them and hang out for a second. Perfect example of that's like your diabetic. If you have hypoglycemic and you're treating them on scene, we kind of spend a little bit longer on scene for those patients. So any ABCs, any problem with the ABCs, that gets fixed immediately. So if the patient's stable, we want their vital signs in normal range or just slightly abnormal. But then ask what is normal for the patient. Because some people live at a systolic of like 100, and that's normal for them. And some people live at a systolic of 160, and that's normal for them. So ask what's normal for your patient. And then if they're unstable, this is where their ABCs are threatened or they are like in imminent danger. This is where they're going to be unstable. Also, just go with your spidey senses. Because we've all had the patient that by looking at them, they should be like stable, and we're like, I don't like this. We're going to treat them as they're unstable. We're going to assess them every 5 minutes instead of every 15 or 10. And so just go with your spidey senses. So their priority can change at any time. This is why we always continuously assess our patients. You can have a patient that's sitting here talking to you, and then all of a sudden they're unconscious, unresponsive, and dead. So it's happened to the best of us. It can happen to anybody. So stay or play, load and go. This is our treatment transport decision. If the life-threatening problem cannot be controlled, or if it threatens to reoccur. A perfect example of this is like an anaphylaxis. If we treat anaphylaxis with their EpiPen, the half-life of Epi is only 3 to 5 minutes. So the chances of their like anaphylaxis coming back is pretty high. It's not abnormal to give multiple doses of Epi while you're out to the hospital. You give them the Epi, they're like, I'm better. And then 5 minutes later, I'm not better. And you need to give them another one. So that's a perfect example of that. All right, questions?
Have you ever seen anyone actually mess up with trying to give someone that and stick your thumb with it? Or is
I've
that-
never seen it, but I've heard it happen a lot.
They're just like, yeah, oh God.
I've had a paramedic that like freaked out, and she was a white cloud, so she didn't get a lot of bad calls. And we had like a 6-year-old having an allergic reaction. She forgot to take the cap off the other side before she freaking popped this kid. So she was just beating the dog piss out of this poor kid with his freaking EpiPen. She was just like freaking stabbing this kid. And I was like, give me the pin. She was just going, I was like, give me that. And I finally snatched it from her. And I like popped the cap off and stabbed the kid with it. So, yeah, that's.
The saying is orange or blue to the sky, orange to the guy. And no thumb on the top. Either way, you're gonna do it. You don't want that needle on your tongue.
Yeah.
Epi is a very potent vasoconstrictor. So all that epi going into just the tip of your thumb can cause a lot of problems. And if, heaven forbid, you freaking hit a nerve or something,
And you're cooked.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. The guy that did our EMR course at Maryville, he had an expired one and he snapped like a sticker.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah.
Oh,
it
yeah.
shot hella far. It shot across the room and hit the wall.
Yeah.
Oh,
He was stabbing at it.
Yeah.
Dang. Did he cut it open?
I didn't cut it open.
So the inside of those EpiPens actually have like a whole like milliliter of epi. They only give 0.3, but if you cut them open and you're ever like in a wilderness survival or you're like out and you need multiple doses, you can pull up more epi. You didn't hear that from me, but you can. Yeah, yeah. I don't even-
You know, quick.
You did not learn
You're still
that.
recording, you messed up.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone heard
I'll
it.
tell CJ